Today, I'm turning this pile into this, a one-to-one replica of the official 3DS store display kiosk. Something Nintendo tried to erase from existence, now fully recreated from scratch. Here is how I did it. Welcome back to Project Kwoktendo, where we build things that probably shouldn't exist, like this. In my previous video, I designed this in 3D, but building this in real life is a completely different challenge. And the craziest part is, I actually got it to look and function just like the original. Here's how. Roll the clips. Oh man, where do I even begin? I guess we start with the main body. Now this part looks simple. It's basically just 5 pieces stacked together using superglue. But if these don't line up perfectly, the entire kiosk is going to be crooked. So no pressure. Each layer is aligned using these wooden dowels, which should keep everything straight. In theory. And the worst part is, I won't even know until everything's fully glued together. At this point, there's no going back. Once this sets, it's permanent. Alright, now we have this giant pole as a single unit. But, believe it or not, that was the easy part. Now, this is where things start to get really bad. The layer lines from the 3D print are everywhere. And the seams between each piece, they look horrific. You could probably fly a plane through those. If I left it like this, it will look terrible. So I needed a way to clean all of this up. I started by filling in the gaps with Bondo putty, which is basically my go-to for anything like this. It's super easy to work with and perfect for hiding seams. After that dried, I went in with some sandpaper and smoothed everything down. That took care of the big seams, but the layer lines were still very much there. So next, I hit the entire piece with a heavy coat of automotive primer. The goal here is to fill in all those tiny lines, so we can sand it back down to something smooth. After a pretty aggressive sanding session, it was finally starting to come together. It's not perfect yet, you can still see some lines, but once paint goes on, those should disappear. At that point, all that was left was to clean it up, so I brushed off all the dust. I actually like using a makeup brush for this, since it doesn't shed. And now, the main pole is ready for painting. This is just one piece of the kiosk though. The next piece will be just as important. Let's make the base. This is easily one of the most important parts of the entire build, because everything is going to sit on top of it. If anything here is even slightly off, the whole kiosk is going to end up leaning, and there's no fixing that later. So once again, it's Bondo time. If this is supposed to look like a convincing solid sheet of metal, it needs to be perfectly smooth. Let's not be afraid to use multiple coats of primer, and more aggressive sanding by hand. There we go, ready to be painted. Now, let's move on to what I probably dread the most, the back piece. I already knew this was going to be a pain. It's made up of 14 separate pieces, which means 14 different chances for something to go wrong. And once you start stacking them, there's no real room for correction. You're basically committing to whatever alignment you set from the beginning. Same process here. Dowel alignment and a lot of superglue. At this point, I'm already on my 3rd bottle, and the fumes in here are getting pretty intense. So, if you're making one of these yourselves, maybe don't do this in a closed room, and definitely kick those kids and pets out. Speaking of which, this is a pretty involved project, so I wouldn't recommend it for beginners. Even if you do everything right, you're still probably gonna run into a few issues along the way. I definitely did. All the files are free to download for you guys if you want to give it a go. While I'm stacking these pieces, let me give you a pretty interesting bit of history behind this kiosk. This kiosk design was exclusive to Europe, while North America had a completely different version that wasn't nearly as nice. And these weren't just sitting in retail stores either. Nintendo had entire rows of them at the 2012 Japan Expo in Paris. And I mean rows. Seeing that many together is kind of surreal in hindsight. It's kind of wild to think about how these existed, and even more wild that none of them are really around anymore. So in a way, this build isn't just a replica. It's kind of a tribute to something that's been lost to time. Now if you look closely, you might notice I'm not matching every detail perfectly. For example, this back section is a bit thicker than the original. The real one was allowed to be thin because it's made of metal. And since this entire thing is 3D printed, I had to adjust a few things so it would actually survive being built. Okay, we're almost done here. Just a little more. Now I know what some of you might be asking. Why the heck am I even making this? And the honest answer is, there isn't really one. I just think it's cool. And if I needed some deep, meaningful reason to build everything on this channel, then this channel probably wouldn't exist in the first place. Anyway, holy guacamole, it's finally done. And it's looking pretty awesome. Now we just let it dry. And then comes all the post-processing. Let's Bondo it. Boom, looking good. This thing drank way more automotive primer than I expected. So much surface area that I had to stop and grab more cans halfway through. Now that we have the 3 main pieces, we can finally start painting. But choosing to paint turned out to be a challenge, because if the finish looked bad, the whole build looks cheap. I had a few options. Spray paint? Easy, but too thin. Acrylic paint? Doesn't bond well. This is supposed to look like solid metal. I couldn't afford to get this part wrong. So I went with this. Oil-based protective enamel. It goes on thicker, it levels out a bit as it dries, and it cures into a much harder surface. So it should hold up way better over time, and help give it that smooth metal-like finish I'm going for. Let's see if this pays off. If this doesn't work, I genuinely don't have a backup plan. We're gonna want several coats of this. And of course, we're going to want gray as well. Look how tiny this can is. Alright, all done. This next part might be a little tricky. We're attaching the entire back piece to this pole. Yeah, the entire thing. If I did everything correctly, the dowels should line up perfectly, and this should just slide into place. If not, I'm kinda screwed. Let's find out. Beautiful. I just really hope super glue alone is strong enough to hold all of this weight. It should be, right? Time for the base. The whole kiosk is designed to slide right down into it. And once again, we're relying on those dowels lining up. This is starting to get a little heavy. That was easier than I expected. Now inside here, there's a bunch of holes, and this is where things get locked in. I'm basically turning this into one solid piece by hammering in a bunch of dowels, soaking them in superglue as I go. That way, the base and the main body are mechanically locked together, not just glued. Now it's finally starting to feel real. Although, it does look a little naked right now. So next, let's build the frames. There are two frames, each made up of 2 pieces. This is where it finally starts to look like a real kiosk. Up until now, it's just been a structure. But once these go in, this is the moment it starts coming to life. With that in place, it was time to move on to the next major section. The area where the 3DS will actually sit. This part is made up of all these pieces here. I think I'm on my 6th bottle of super glue. This piece right here is what connects the entire unit to the main body of the kiosk. This is worth mentioning. None of this is reverse engineered from the original kiosk. I modeled the whole thing from reference photos to look real from the outside, but structurally it's all just me making confident decisions and hoping for the best. This slit is designed so I can slide in a piece of paper, just like in the real display. The next piece has a bunch of holes, and it's the same idea as the base. I'm reinforcing it with dowels to add strength. In total, I'm using 12 dowels here, all glued in place to lock everything together. This piece right here is where the 3DS system will sit, so I just need to glue these 2 parts together. Nice. And now, bear with me one more time for the post-processing. It's done. Sheesh. Now if you look here, you'll see some holes all over the place. And no, I'm not about to shove more dowels in here. These are actually for threaded inserts. The plan is to mount this section using screws instead of glue, so it can be removed later if I ever need to access or fix anything. Future me is going to appreciate this. Probably. There's also these 4 in the back. Now we can screw everything together. Awesome. One final thing left. The shelves. 6 of them, 3 on each side. And after everything this build has put me through, I'm not sanding them, I'm not painting them. They already look fine, and I have made my peace with that. I'm actually not totally sure what the original kiosk shelves were even meant to display. But for me, they're holding my 3DS games, and that feels most appropriate anyway. We're finally done building the kiosk. From here on out, it's all the fun stuff. What kind of fun, you ask? Well, it still feels a little empty. So how about we add a little color to it? These kiosks had info cards. One for the top frame, one for the bottom. And finding the right ones turned out to be way harder than I thought. Looking at the original kiosks, there were a ton of different versions for the top frame. Luigi's Mansion, Kingdom Hearts, Street Fighter, Super Mario Maker, and more. But if I had to pick one, I would choose the most iconic and best-selling 3DS game of all time, Mario Kart 7. There's just one problem. The only photos I could find were these 2. I couldn't find this exact card image anywhere. So using what I have as a reference, I made it myself. And here's how it turned out. Not bad, I think. No one's allowed to judge it until someone finds the real photo. Alright, so that takes care of the top frame. But the bottom frame was a whole different problem. I personally reached out to a bunch of 3DS kiosk owners looking for anything that could go in here. One person came through. Huge shout out to RioGen for sending over recreated scans in Photoshop for us to use. This was an enormous time saver for me. But I had to make some changes though. This is Project Kwoktendo. I'm not just copying this kiosk, I'm making it mine. The Kwoktendo 3DS. That's much better. Same thing for the smaller card. I now have all 3 info cards printed out. Walmart photo printing. Not exactly high expectations here. Not bad. I'll take that. Let's trim these down and get them installed. I'm also cutting a cheap plexiglass to size. This will protect the cards, but more importantly, it's going to act as a window for the screen I'm adding later. More on that soon. This is looking phenomenal, but there's still much more to do. Let's add some decals here. For this, I ordered 3D, UV, DTF transfers, which is genuinely a lot of syllables for what is basically a really good sticker. These things are kind of insane. They go on super clean, they pop, and they instantly make everything look way more professional. And the best part is, they're really cheap. There's a smaller one that goes here too. We have one more decal to install, but this one is a little different because it goes on this, a glass panel. I ordered 2 kinds, a clear one and an acid etched one. The reason for that is, later on I'm adding LEDs behind this, and the etched glass should diffuse the light. So instead of seeing harsh individual LEDs, you get that soft glow like the real kiosk. At least, that's the idea. So let's get the decal on first. The glass slides right into place. I designed the kiosk with 2 slots specifically for these 2. Perfect. Now I need something white behind it so the light has something to bounce off of. I'm just using a piece of poster board for this. Sweet. Wait. That's not ideal. Alright, take 2. There we go. Now we can put this back together. But none of this is gonna matter without the lighting. I'm using a simple 5-volt USB strip. Nothing too fancy. But if this diffuses properly through the glass, it should look really clean. The strip has some handy adhesive on the back, so I'm just lining it along the edges of the window, trying to keep it as even as possible. That should do it. Now we just need to power it. Alright, crossing my fingers. If this doesn't look good, the whole glass panel idea was a waste. Yeah, look at that backglow. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Moving on, the original Kiosk had a screen constantly looping Nintendo 3DS trailers. And this is the part I've been looking forward to the most. So let's add ours. I'm using a 7-inch portable monitor for this. And you can already tell this thing is top quality by looking at that explosion on the box art. Very professional. It comes with a mini HDMI cable and a couple of USB-C power cords. The monitor should just slide right down in here. Except it has to go in upside down, because all the ports are on top and I want them facing downward. Now we can route the HDMI and power cord through this channel here. Now we need to make it actually do something, because right now it's just a screen, and I want this thing looping 3DS trailers automatically. Non-stop. Forever. So the question is, what's going to run it? If you guessed a Raspberry Pi, you already know where this is going. To actually run the screen, I'm using something called MP4 Museum. It's basically a ready-made Raspberry Pi setup that turns it into a seamless looping media player, which is perfect for this. I'm not going to do a step-by-step here. There's already a great guide for this, but I did make a couple small tweaks. Since the screen is upside down, I had to rotate the display 180 degrees. And I also changed it so the videos play in random order. So it feels more like a real kiosk, where you never know what trailer will come up next. Then I can load all my 3DS trailers into the media folder. And that's genuinely it. I was expecting this to be the hard part. It was not. So let's hook everything up and see what happens. Okay, we can see that the screen works. That's good. A little bit of terminal text here. That's normal probably. What's going to be our first trailer? That's my custom-made splash screen. And... no way! We got a Pokemon Sun and Moon trailer. This is perfect. And most importantly, it works. Mostly. Because I immediately realized there's no way to control the volume on the built-in speakers, and the only way to fix that is through the Pi itself, which I do not want to deal with. So, quick solution. I picked up these cheap USB speakers with a volume control on the cable. Not the cleanest setup, but you know what? It works. I can control the volume, and I'm moving on to the 3DS system itself. And what better system to put in this kiosk than my very first Nintendo 3DS? But before I do anything, you have to see this. Did you guys know these existed? This is the Mario Kart 7 demo cartridge. Not for resale. Its entire purpose was to let people try the game in retail stores. Which means this cartridge was once used in an actual real Nintendo kiosk somewhere. Insane. Instead of going to the home screen, it boots straight into Mario Kart 7, and it'll cycle through gameplay footage too. This is so tempting to just pick up and play, but I need to focus. The 3DS needs a mounting bracket, and that turned out to be annoying. I needed something that could lock the 3DS open, hold it in place, and make sure no one could just walk off with it. Here's the original that I used as a reference. After way too many failed prints, I finally got something that works. It slides into the 3DS like this. Top piece snaps into the bottom piece. And now, the 3DS can't close. Perfect. And inside this hole is where my chunky wire is gonna go. I picked up some plastic flex tubing for this. Yes, I know the original is made of stainless steel. I really considered using my shower hose for this, but if I did that, I'd get in trouble. And I wouldn't be able to hide a 3DS charger inside here, so the kiosk can charge the system from the inside, which is a nice touch. I'm going to hot glue the tubing with the bracket. Not too much glue, otherwise the top piece won't snap on. And we're good. Actually, we're not good. Guys, I've made a horrible mistake. I need to get this tube in the hole. But how? I can't anymore. I should have done that before I hot glued the bracket. Okay, I just ended up printing a new bracket, and I won't make the same mistake this time. I already routed the tube through the hole, and the 3DS charger is already plugged into the power strip. Now I can hot glue it. Amazing. That really completes the kiosk. Oh, don't forget the stylus. It goes on right here. The stylus should also be wired to the bracket. And to wrap it up, let's close the back. First, I'm just cleaning up those speaker wires with a bit of hot glue. But man, I need to cover all of this with the back panel. And I'm going to do something that might upset some of you. Instead of 3D printing the cover, I'm using wood. Yeah, I know, we made it this far, 3D printing basically everything. But hear me out. The back panel just has to be a giant rectangle. There's no reason to burn through a ton of filament when this does the exact same thing. So let's get this mounted. 4 screws. Right into the threaded inserts from earlier. And that's it. That's the final piece. We are done. And that is the kiosk. I still can't believe it actually works. And it looks amazing next to my Kwoktendo Switch kiosk. Shout out to the ones who helped me along the way. And of course, my imaginary Patreon supporters. And you, the viewer. Now, this is just one kiosk I wanted to recreate. So the question is, which one should I build next? Drop it in the comments. And if you want to see that one get made, subscribe. Okay, that's all the time I've got. I gotta get back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on my Nintendo 3DS.